I read Dark Empire, which, before I get into the story, very cool art, but at some points it is confusing to tell who certain characters are. I'll get into that when we get to it. I'm confused how this really fits in the timeline because the last story was The Last Command, and if you look on Wikipedia, the timeline goes The Last Command, then Dark Empire. The power balance is completely different in the galaxy. How that ended, the New Republic won, and then how this starts, the rebels now are fighting the Imperials, taking back over the galaxy, and they're fighting over Coruscant, which doesn't look like Coruscant. It's like in ruins. So I don't know what happened between these stories, and they're supposed to take place in the same year. I don't know what happened so fast, and I don't think there's anything that explains it. And if there is, please let me know. I was gonna read Dark Empire 1, 2, and 3 all in one go, then do the whole video like that because it's a comic book. I felt like it'd be faster even though I have a ton of notes. But I just posted a video about the Mandalorian and Grogu trailer and my thoughts and feelings about the current state of Star Wars on that. That got way more views than I've ever gotten. Right now, as of recording this, it has 1,000 views and a ton of comments. I'm trying to respond to all the comments, but it's really hard to because I usually only get like 1 or 2 comments, and one of them is usually my friend telling me to take steroids, and I'm not going to do that. But it's a nice comment, I guess. So yeah. Very out of the ordinary for me so far. Very exciting. I hope some of you from that video have stayed to join me in this journey to explore the expanded universe like this. Thank you for watching my video and commenting like that. It's really dope. That's really all I wanted. It's just a little bit of people interacting with it. That's made my day. Anyway, I'll get back to the story. So the New Republic, or rebels in this story, and the Imperials are fighting over Coruscant. Don't know what happened in Coruscant. Doesn't look like Coruscant. It's all in ruins. What happened? And it's like they're on the ground on Coruscant. It's like one big city. Even in the Thrawn trilogy, it was like a city and there's just a little bit of mountains. So I don't know what's going on. Luke and Lando crash land a stolen Star Destroyer, and Han, Leia, and Chewie take the Falcon to go and rescue them. And while fighting Imperial war droids, Leia senses the return of a powerful Force user. Leia uses the Force. She's using the Force a lot more now, by the way. It's kind of really cool. I hope that goes somewhere in general with the rest of the books, not just Dark Empire. She uses the Force to put confusion in the minds of these attacking Necks. Now, Necks are Corellian battle dogs that the Imperials are using. And Luke, after being missing for days or weeks, I forgot which one, he comes out of the wreckage. He was just meditating in there or whatever, and he stands alone against just an army of Imperial soldiers, AT-ATs and all that. They shoot at him, and he reflects a blaster bolt from the AT-AT back at it, then uses the Force to bring it down. Very epic. It was kind of similar to the shot in The Last Jedi, but he actually took on the whole Empire by himself, unlike in that movie where he kind of mocked it because he's like a legend or whatever. But for those that don't like the sequels, I'm kind of one of them. But I'll probably be referencing a lot because of a certain thing that happens in this story. And there's a lot of parallels to that trilogy in this. I think it was kind of like a pseudo adaptation of this, which I don't think it was meant to be. I think it was meant to be its own thing, but they took elements from this knowingly or unknowingly. Of all things, why would you do it of Dark Empire? So Luke senses an intense dark side presence and insists to face it alone. And Han, being the great friend he is, says, "Whatever this thing is, we'll be right beside you, kid." Blasters blazing. And so it just shows what kind of a friend Han is, and that he's like a ride or die, and that comes into play later. Then a hyperspace wormhole opens, and what is that? I don't know what that is. I tried Googling it and I found no answers. A Force storm comes out of it, and so Luke convinces everyone to leave so he can face it on his own, even though they disagree, but they end up leaving anyway. And Luke allows himself to be captured, believing he must face the dark side alone to destroy it from within. Where is this mindset coming from? This is very unlike Luke. I don't know. Not a fan of it, but this is the best that Dark Empire has to offer. The other two stories are way lower in quality than this, in my opinion. I'm reading Dark Empire 2 right now, and I prefer this one way more. There's some cool things in that one, I will agree. Also, Luke in this story looks nothing like Luke. There are times where I'm seeing Luke do stuff, and I'm like, who is that? And I gotta remind myself that, oh yeah, that's Luke. He just doesn't look like Luke. And they got mostly everyone else looking like themselves. I don't know how they didn't get Luke right.
Obama ain't right.
He just looks odd. Anyway, R2 goes up with him, which kind of reminds me of either a theory or maybe it was in a book somewhere. I don't know. I didn't read it. I just saw it online. That R2 always listened to Anakin when he said stay with the ship, like on Mustafar, and Anakin never came back. And because of that, anytime Luke tells him to stay with the ship or to wait till he returns, something like that, he doesn't listen. So I like how this kind of plays into that headcanon that R2 learned from that mistake, and he doesn't leave him alone since. And Leia feels uneasy about the way that Luke looked at her, and she felt afraid of him because he's turning to the dark side, but you know, spoilers. There's this new super weapon called the World Devastators. Now, I really like this. This is probably my favorite super weapon that we've discovered so far in this journey. I'm sure there's much more later on. So, the World Devastators destroy cities, they consume matter, which produces weapons. I don't know, I think they're pretty cool. I like the concept of it. Then we find out that Mon Mothma was the minister in Han and Leia's wedding, which means nothing to the story, but I thought it was a fun fact and I wanted to include it. So now Luke is in the Imperial dungeon ship, which was the type used to transport Jedi during the Clone Wars. And there's Mandalorian walls, which Luke cannot see through with the Force. And he's being sent to the planet Biss, which is in the deep core of the galaxy. And it's entirely enveloped by the dark side. And this is where
somehow Palpatine returned.
This is explained in the story, unlike in the sequels where you have to either go on YouTube and find out that he was a clone or read comics or a book, or I don't know what it was revealed in. And he says it's not the first time he died, nor will it be the last, which, spoiler alert, that's true. And he offers Luke dark side knowledge, and Luke very easily kneels before him and pledges himself to his teachings with the intent to destroy him from within. And that makes me think of the quote from Jurassic Park 3.
Some of the worst things imaginable have been done with the best intentions.
And Luke is obviously turning to the dark side. He's just in way over his head. So Luke appeared to Leia as Vader, then he reveals himself as Luke after he confuses her, and he tells her not to come find him and not to interfere, and then she collapses. So naturally, Han and Leia travel to Nar Shaddaa to meet Han's ex and this guy, Mako Spince, who's like a smuggler, someone that Han knows. So they can help them sneak to Biss and help Luke. And almost immediately, they are betrayed by Mako, and they're pursued by bounty hunters. And this is where Boba Fett returns, and he's flying Slave 2. Don't know what happened to Slave 1, but he's in Slave 2. And Boba says, the Sarlacc found me somewhat indigestible, which I think is pretty funny because he's wearing the Beskar armor, and that's probably why. You saw that in the Book of Boba Fett, which was probably my favorite part of that show. They escape with help from the underworld because everyone wants to kill them because Leia killed Jabba. And the bounty is mighty high because of it. And found out Dengar is alive. So that guy that Mar killed in Dark Force Rising that had the ID that said Dengar, I thought that was this Dengar, the bounty hunter. Turns out it's not, so I'm glad he's not dead, but I don't know much about the guy anyway, I just knew his name. And Han and Leia meet this fallen Jedi, Vima Da Boda. She gives Leia a lightsaber, and I thought she already had one. She had one in the Thrawn trilogy, but now she has this one because she didn't have one, apparently. Then she vanishes, and they're like, where'd she go? And I'm like, I don't. Get back to Luke. Getting back to Luke. Luke is now Supreme Commander and commands the Imperial forces on Mon Cala, where the World Devastators are destroying the planet, basically. So he's leading them, and he's secretly tampering with the Devastators' programming with the help of R2. And during a battle, Lando's during this. I don't talk much about Lando in this because I'm focusing more on the main part of the story, and he's kind of in the background. They're having a battle on Mon Cala, and a Devastator blows up, and they're like, wow, we found its weak spot. And he's like, nah, that thing self-destructed. Thanks, Luke, but they don't know it's Luke. And now Leia senses Luke's inner conflict and decides to go to him. So they go to Biss on a stolen Imperial shuttle with the help of Sala. So now Leia confronts Palpatine and Luke with the new lightsaber she has, even though where's her old one? Don't know. And Palpatine destroys her lightsaber with the Force. Kind of epic. I kind of like that. That's cool. And then he shoots her with Force lightning. I'm not going to do the sound effect like I did last time because I choked. And this enrages Han. I think it's Han. Can't tell who it is. I thought it was Luke at first. And I was like, wow, Luke cared. And then he immediately didn't. So I think it's Han. Because then Han breaks free and then tries to punch Luke. And Luke's like, no. He's like, you're not going to be the one to kill me. So then Han and Chewie are imprisoned. and Palpatine tries to turn Leia to the dark side and shows her a Jedi holocron, and then he tells her that she's pregnant. She didn't know. I think this is Anakin Solo she's pregnant with. And Palpatine is trying to steal her unborn child and raise him in the dark side and then use him as his next vessel. Evil, but I like it. That's kind of cool. And so in response, she just goes, never. And then just pushes him out of his like chair or bed, whatever this thing is, and then runs off with a holocron, and he goes, get her. Very cartoonish, but I found it very funny. There's some enjoyable parts in this, even though the story isn't my favorite, but you can still find joy in things that you don't necessarily agree with, which is very, very nice. Anyway, check out this pic of Han and Chewie in prison. I thought it was very funny. Now, Leia finds Luke, and Sala used a probe droid. They like sliced into it, which is Star Wars version of hacking, to shoot out a wall in Han and Chewie's cell. And then they escape. They find Luke, and Luke says Leia's power helped him break the grip of the dark side and gets them off Biss. He's using a force projection to make them believe he was with them. So they leave, but he was still on Biss. He was just tricking them. When Han saw him, he was ready to shoot him. So much for being friends. Immediately, he was on sight. And Leia's like, no. And Luke just goes, you better listen to Leia. So obviously, he's not himself, and they're believing it. It was not convincing at all, but they had so much faith in him. Now that they're off-world, traveling away, the projection fades away, and they're like, he's still there. We got to turn around. And Han's like, we're not going back. Not going back. And Luke fights Palpatine and kills him. And he destroys the cloning tanks, missing one, which allows Palpatine to enter another clone body. And now he's fighting Luke while naked. Interesting part of the story. But thankfully, you do not see much. And then he disarms Luke, which is very humbling. And then he turns Luke farther into the dark side because he realizes he has no chance. Now, the Devastators continue their attack, destroying everything. And this is where Leia is looking through this holocron and she finds out about the Skywalker prophecy. The dumbest thing in Dark Empire, in my opinion. I can deal with the Emperor coming back, but this prophecy is so stupid and it's so obvious. Like, it's so on the nose. It's like, you can tell, I'll read it for you guys. You could tell that whoever wrote this was like, this is some good stuff right here. This is the best writing of my life. It's not. So on the nose. And so that prophecy is, I'm going to read it. Brother and sister born to walk the sky. But reckless brother falls to the dark side's eye. Jedi sister carries hope for the future in her womb. Only she can save the Skywalkers from certain doom. A Jedi killer wants to tame her. Now the dark side lord comes to claim her. She must battle join against this thief, or the dynasty of all the Jedi will come to grief. What was that? What was that? I read that and I was like, yo, what are we doing? It's like, you could have cut that out. It did not need to be there. That had no place in this story, but it was still here. Anyway, now at the Rebels, like, I don't know, fleet or whatever. I think they're on a moon or something. I don't remember. Palpatine's flagship arrives. He gives out this transmission. He's like, give me Leia and we will negotiate a truce. And so Leia's like, I have to. And everyone's like, please go. You know, obviously, he's not going to have a truce. He wants to rule everything. Leia and Luke briefly fight. And I mean briefly, it's like, and then she talks some sense into him. And that's all it takes for him to be like, you're right. I'm dumb. And then Palpatine attacks him. And then they fight. I do like this fight. This fight was pretty cool. And then Luke cuts off his hand, which more hand stuff in Star Wars. It's a staple. And then Luke destroys the Devastators because he reprogrammed the central command systems. Everything's solved. We don't need part 2 or 3 of Dark Empire because the end of this story kind of wraps it up, but no, they wanted more. Maybe once I finish it, I'll like it more, but I don't think they needed any more than just the first 6 issues of this. And so Palps, mad as he is, he unleashes a massive force storm that can consume fleets and planets. And Luke and Leia focus their minds with the Force on the words of Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, the do it or not, and then,
for my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is.
This separates Palpatine from his power, and the Force storm devours him and his flagship. So he dies. Died before, and I'll die again, or something like that. Is that what he said? I've died before, and I'll die again. And he did. After Palpatine is defeated for the second time, technically third time, because he killed Palpatine earlier in the comic, and he just went into a clone. Now Luke decides 9 years after Return of the Jedi, this is the time that the Jedi need to rise again. Way to go. So yeah, that was Dark Empire Part 1. I am reading Part 2. I'm about halfway through that, and I'll get that out as soon as I can. I'll probably put Part 2 and Part 3 together because Part 3 is very short, Empire's End. And I only remember one part of Empire's End, and it was a funny part when I read it like 4 years ago. And so I'm excited to talk about that because it made me laugh. I don't know if I'll rank this now. I'm not going to rank this in this episode. I'm going to rank this in the next one when I'm talking about 2 and 3. I'm just going to rank Dark Empire as no, I can't. This is so much better. That'll drag it down. I gotta decide now, and I'm leaving this in so you guys know my struggle. I'll do it all as one because, yeah, the other ones I feel like are gonna drag it down a little bit more. I feel like that's the best way to do it because these are so short. I don't know, I was talking for like 30 minutes anyway, but yeah, I'll rank it next time, rank it all together, and I will do the same thing with Crimson Empire and probably with any other comic runs that I do with Star Wars. So yeah. See you next time for my tier list edition of Dark Empire. But right now, this is just with this, just Dark Empire. It's leaning towards maybe a C. It's leaning towards a C right now, from the way I'm thinking. It's cool. The art was cool. Sometimes you couldn't tell who Luke was. I didn't know if it was Han or not. I got mad. But yeah, I'd rank this a C. And we'll see how it ranks once I add 2 and Empire's End to it. Maybe once I read it again, it'll boost it. I doubt it. So yeah, see you next time. I might have a mustache next time. Who knows? I might shave it.